Yesterday on the programme, you might have heard Colin do an interview about mental health, because this week is Children's Mental Health Week. And a report by the Children's Commissioner in England reveals that 1 in 6 children is believed to be struggling with mental health issues. I'm very pleased to say, joining me to talk more about this, and it is a subject that we have talked about many times before, is the head of Wycombe High, Sharon Cromie. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. So I know that this is something that actually you take very, very seriously at your school, and that actually, one of the most important things to you actually is the mental well-being of your students.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Bob. And I've been in post now for almost 14 years. And it's quite interesting when you take a moment to pause and look back, and you can see how this whole agenda has developed over that period, and how much more importance nationally is being attached to it, which I think is very, very important and very positive.
I would imagine that it's a very, very tricky job when you are a teacher, because on the one hand, you are having to ensure that, yes, that your pupils are happy and healthy mentally, but at the same time, actually having to teach them about some of the more terrible bits of this world that we live in, particularly with regards to what we've been through over the last 5, 6, 7 years. It must be really, really difficult. And I'm thinking things such as climate change, which actually, when I hear things about climate change, it scares me as someone who's 47. So I can't quite imagine what it's like trying to teach an 11-year-old about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I suppose what you're getting at, Bob, is the fact that we teach so much, not just core curriculum or core academic subjects, but the young people are, in a way that they weren't many decades ago, exposed to so many more big issues, and that they have access, because of social media, because of the internet, to a range of information on these big issues, which can, if not handled well, affect how they feel about the world, how they feel about themselves. So yes, it is a bit of a challenge. So it means that thankfully, that personal, social, and emotional health education has become statutory in England this academic year. We were an early adopter of it and have been doing it for many years, but that's now a statutory curriculum. And that in no small way addresses exactly what you're talking about. So it brings together all of these big issues, but gives it a place in a school so that those discussions can be had in a scaffolded, safe, secure way, whilst also teaching young people how to have debate and how to think analytically and critically about these big subjects and not become overwhelmed by them. And that statutory curriculum also directly addresses mental health. But in addition, schools like mine and many other schools also in parallel have mental health leads and have another agenda to support mental health. And of course, good mental health is achieved when we're physically fit and well too.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say to your students about mental health and about good mental health? How do you teach good mental health, I suppose, is my question.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to recognize is that we now talk about it, that we now acknowledge that it is equally as important as physical health. And 14 years ago, it wasn't necessarily talked about. So I think that has been a seismic shift culturally, not just in schools, but across the United Kingdom, that there is this recognition that mental health is equally as important as physical health. And that's because of the stats and the numbers of people that are now being diagnosed with mental health issues or conditions. So when you're teaching it, it's quite tricky. So stress is an inevitable part of anyone's life. And actually, there is such a thing as good stress. It actually is, can motivate, it can drive, it can make people determined. It's when stress is on a tipping point that it can become unhealthy. So it's important to teach young people how to deal with what we call situational stress. Now, we are not mental health experts, so we have to reach out to experts in this area, and we invite them into schools to speak to us, and we work with the PSHE, the Personal Social Health association who have links with experts as well to make sure we do this well. And then we have to build very sound relationships through a range of staff to look out for when there might be a mental health issue, so that we can support with low-level issues such as anxiety around exams, or parents going through a divorce, or some friendship issues, the normal sort of anxieties that young people would expect to see during adolescence. We can help with those and have a counselling structure, etc., to do so. But then there may be more significant issues that lead into, severe anxiety or psychosis or eating disorders or depression and clinical depression, etc. Or at the far end of the spectrum, you've got suicidal ideation as well. And that's when we have to point to the clinical, medical and health experts who have the appropriate qualifications and expertise to pick up these young people and to treat it. So in the same way, if a child fell over, broke their ankle in a football, rugby, netball match, we would get the medical experts in to do the x-ray, the diagnosis and the plastering, etc. When it's a significant mental health issue, we rightly refer on to the expert medical and health professionals.
And it's fantastic to hear you use that as an example, because that is such a good one. I would imagine as well that alongside all of this, you have got obviously so many different things going on to when, say, we were at school, in that the social media, the internet is now an area where children get most of their information from. Yeah. Whereas very much, and I've possibly said this to you before, I've certainly said it on this program before, with regards to the outside world news, really, when I was growing up, you had John Craven, and that was probably about it.
Yes, it's absolutely right. It also meant in our area, Bob, you could make a mistake and it was not as public as it is in today's world.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
So, and of course, life is all about making mistakes, isn't it? We learn as much from making mistakes as we do from learning a piece of information. So that's actually quite a crucial point to make. In today's world, there can be no hiding. And because of how young people consume information and how they communicate, they are communicating not only across schools, but they communicate across geographical boundaries, nationally and often internationally. When you look at some of the social media applications such as TikTok and other apps that they might use and put information onto. So we have to teach all of that. And that is part of our PSHE curriculum, also part of our national curriculum, where you're teaching young people the difference between fake and real news. You're teaching them how to keep themselves well online and safe online, and how to use social media and the internet safely and well, as if it were a face-to-face conversation. So all of that has to be taught as well. But nonetheless, some children can get drawn into very unhealthy online forums that can lead to issues. So there are very dark places online where young people can get drawn into groups where they talk about eating very unhealthily, or they can talk about suicide ideation very unhealthily. So schools have to monitor internet. We have to give advice out to parents as well on what to do at home, because there has to be a really strong partnership. So it is a very complex situation to do this well, and it relies on many partnerships and relationships, and it requires everyone to come to the table fully informed and engaged. And that's not always there when our young people have more of the significant mental health issues that I've mentioned.
Yes, of course, I completely understand. And particularly with regards to things like spotting fake news from real news, when we even have some of our leaders now actually blurring the lines between those two things, it must be so hard, particularly teaching young people, when I think, even us as parents possibly could do sometimes with some lessons in actually just what you say to your children when they're coming to you saying, is this real? And you're sort of having to explain, well, no, just look at some of those signs. But it is a really, really difficult area.
Yeah, it is absolutely, Bob. You know, and you know, we all see headlines, don't we, that flash up on whether it's, you know, your phone from the BBC News, or whether it's from, you know, Facebook or Instagram or a WhatsApp group that you're a part of, that can seem very credible.
Yes.
And we're all busy people. You can read it and only scan read it and take it for the truth and not actually question it. So I take that point, and I think that's absolutely important. And I know in Buckinghamshire, for example, you know, there are often parenting classes that are available free of charge, led by the local authority, of how to navigate many of these choppy water issues with young people. But I think the system, if you like, nationally has some way to go for it all to be stacked up appropriately, for people to be aware of all of the help that is there. You know, I often think, when I try to think this through in my own head, if you think of the Industrial Revolution, and then we got lots of cars on the roads, somewhere along the line we had to work through traffic lights, we had to work out a highway code, we had to work out, you know, the law around motoring, so that everyone could keep themselves healthy and safe, and that there were protocols. And it strikes me we're now living in a period where we're learning to adjust to the internet, to social media, to all the mental health and other issues that can bring. And we have yet to get the protocols and the codes and the practices all in place and working at a national level.
Yeah, that's such a good point about the Industrial Revolution. And actually, yes, that must have been mind-blowing at the time. But you know, and you can go back to any point probably in history and actually feel, well, goodness me, yeah, you know, so many things are changing at the moment, but you know, actually, yeah, it would, you know, the internet is just another one of those things. You talked about headlines, and again, I think I've said to you previously, I always really dislike when we see headlines about exams, and particularly things such as exams being made easier, or the headline that we always get whenever the GCSEs and A-levels come out, where they always say, oh, the record numbers of people have passed, which always, I think, if you're one of those students who've passed that particular year, it must be really frustrating, because it slightly seems as if the news organizations are demeaning what you've done. Obviously, we've had this news in the past couple of days with regards to exams, but I want to get your take on it, because I did see a few headlines that were saying, oh, exams are being made easier. And I thought, well, I'm sure that's not really what's going on.
No, it's not at all. I think the first thing I'd say, Bob, is that Wycombe High School, like every school in England, last year, when young people were given the grades, had to base those grades on a system or a series of assessments. And at Wycombe High School, there were significant number of assessments into, you know, well into double figures, 20, 30, 40 assessments. So we know with absolute confidence that the grades our students got reflected their abilities, and we are extraordinarily proud of them. And in addition, they built so many skills around resilience and determination and motivation. But what happens in a normal year is that children walk into an exam hall, they do the exam, and then the examination boards look at the numbers of children who are attaining at a very high level, whether that's A star, A, B, C, or grades 9, 8, 7, 6, etc. at GCSE. And they then adjust the grade boundaries to make sure that there is not what they call grade inflation. So when you eradicate that and you come to the table with teacher assessments, there is no surprise that more children are attaining at a higher level. So these children have done really, really well, but parents and everyone else out there needs to know that in normal times, to stabilize the system, to avoid deflation, grade boundaries are adjusted. So what might be an A grade in a certain period of time may not be an A grade at another start of time. And that is a complex picture and very difficult to take on board.
Yeah, but I think you've explained it very, very well, Sharon. As you have everything this morning, you know, I do think that whenever you speak, I do think, oh, I'd like to come to your school, even though I am now 47. Thank you so much for joining us on Wycombe Sound today, and look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
Not at all. Thank you very much, Bob.
No problem at all. That is the head of Wycombe High, Sharon Cromie, on Wycombe Sound.